Hello, and welcome to another episode of Never Go Against the Family. We're coming to you live from the University of Northern Iowa Family Business Center in Cedar Falls, Iowa. We follow family businesses and topics that help your family business sustain itself. In this episode, Dan interviews Libby Nelson, who's part of the second generation of Kemin Industries in Des Moines. Libby is Vice President and General Counsel at Kemin and has seen the company grow from an ingredient supplier to a global biotechnology company. Stay tuned to hear more about the Kemin story.
So my guest today is Libby Nelson with Kemin Industries out of Des Moines, but in truth, a global company, incredibly global company, and maybe one that isn't always known just because they're not as consumer facing as some of the other large companies in Iowa, but incredibly integral to the economy of Iowa. And so grateful to have you on with me today, Libby. I was wondering if you could talk first about your background, because it wasn't as maybe traditional as some of your other siblings in terms of joining the company. I think, you first pursued a law degree and went down a path of career outside the family. Can you talk a little bit about how you went through that?
Sure. I graduated from Washington University in 1977, and then my law degree was from Drake. And when I started in 1980, Kemin was just not big enough to have in-house counsel.
Yeah.
So I didn't have an option to join Kemin. So I took a job. I worked in Milwaukee for a year, and then I came back. I worked in Des Moines for the Iowa, at the time it was called the Iowa Commission on Aging. And then I clerked for the bankruptcy court. It's going to sound like I can't hold a job, but and then I worked for the Attorney General's office in the Department of Revenue. So if you're starting to kind of hear a theme here, there's a bit of a business theme here.
Absolutely.
And then I was in private practice in Des Moines, and then I moved over to the Industrial Commissioner's office. And then from there, I moved back to the Attorney General's office, and I represented agencies basically that I would call transactional agencies for the state. People like the lottery, so intellectual property. I did intellectual property and contracts there. And I represented General Services, which is the purchasing agent for the state of Iowa. At the time it was, I think now it's the administrative department or the Department of Administration. I'm not sure what it's called now.
DAS or something.
But like my job was to read contracts, defend appeals, write RFPs. I also worked for the ICN, so I learned a lot about fiber optics and fiber optic networks and rights of way and how to install things in the ground. I also represented the treasurer, the auditor, sometimes the Department of Personnel.
Holy smokes.
The Iowa Finance Authority, Iowa Higher Education Authority. So I had this bucket of clients that I represented, and then I moved over to the Iowa Finance Authority for a little while to be their in-house counsel. So learned about bonds and financing.
Yeah.
And then I moved back to the Attorney General's office, and I was still representing the ICN and doing transactional work. And then I joined Kemin as in-house counsel in 2001, right after 9/11, actually. So it was November. I joined in November 2001. So my experience, I would say, definitely has helped me in this job. Because when I was with the state, and it's like, so the state built a new prison, so I reviewed architects' contracts and building contracts for that. I didn't do the land work, the property work there, but so I did property work. I had some trial work that I did, basically administrative, but also some trial work when I was representing the lottery and other agencies. And so So yeah, it was a broad, I would say a very broad background that when I landed at Kemin, probably the only piece that I did not have was a lot of science, but since I had grown up with it, I knew the names of all the products and I knew what they did. And
Sure.
so, could I draw the molecules? No. Could I draw the molecules now? I can draw some of them.
How about okay?
So that was my background.
How did you? I mean, it's really pretty. How did you keep tabs to have like kind of conversations with your parents, siblings, others about coming
Oh, we
back?
had dinner. I had dinner with my parents every Friday night. And then we had, so when my kids were growing up, we lived in West Des Moines, they live in West Des Moines. They were still living in the house that I grew up in on 18th Street until 2001.
Okay.
So when I had my kids, we were same church. I would see them Sunday morning, Friday nights. We would go. Uh, we did vacations together, so I spent a lot of time with my folks. So, um, so every Friday night they would tell us what was going on, and we would have shareholder meetings every year. So we started
Okay.
having shareholder meetings when I was sorry, um, probably like my first years, probably when we were in college. We
Okay.
started having regular shareholder meeting on Christmas Day
Okay. What a fun way to
because
start
everybody
Christmas.
was home.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
everybody was home and we had time. And so we would just sit down, we'd have a shareholder meeting. And then and we would also have shareholder meetings along the way. It was really important to my parents that they were transparent about the business. Were we
Okay.
doing okay? Were we not doing okay? Um, and because you know, when we were growing up, one of my goals had always been to join Kemin, but like I said, when it was 1977 and I was graduating from college, Kemin wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
So,
So did you kind of
um,
communicate that, your goals, your interests in working for the family
oh yeah,
business? Okay.
yeah,
And so your parents were aware of
yeah,
that.
because we had all worked, yeah, we had all worked for Kemin growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so because we were sort of, we were available labor. And
Yeah.
we were able to do repetitive jobs that didn't require a lot of skill. One of the things that RW developed was an applicator system that had a lot of parts, and so we set up the part packing department in our basement.
Okay. So you had
So
your own little
we would sit and yeah,
you had your own little assembly line down there, huh?
Chris was yeah, yeah, Chris was old enough to handle so when we were done with the applicator pieces, once they had been screwed together, it had a regulator on it that stuck out of the box. And so you'd have to drill a hole through the box so that you could put the regulator through the box and then you'd screw it on. So that was Chris's job because it involved a drill and that I did a few of those, but we did sit and watch TV and we wound a lot of Teflon tape around brass fittings.
Oh my gosh.
So and then the packets would go with nozzles and the packets would go with the applicator and then the applicator would be sold with a forge preservative product.
Sure. Oh, cool.
So
Okay, so from an early age you're
yeah, so
exposed. An early age you're getting knowledge
very
about
yes.
performance and ups and downs of the business. And
Yep,
and you're also communicating then your interest in wanting to be a part of that too, right? And
that's
okay.
correct.
So then how did things kind of come about where, they decided, okay, we've got enough size here. Let's bring Libby on. How did that go down?
So my mother was ready to step back a little bit from her duties because she was really sort of running that piece of our intellectual property portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And so she called one day and said, "Hey, do you want to come over and start and do this?" And I said, "Yes." So, um, and so she basically turned over to me the trademark portfolio, the patent portfolio. And then when I got here, the other thing I started to work on was just improving the quality of our contracts, and then working on land transactions, and also regulatory things, and also supporting the HR function. So
Okay.
employment, so employment
Oh
law.
man. Okay. I mean, those sound like a little bit three full-time jobs right there, but I'm guessing you were busy.
I was, well, not right at first, but I got busy after that.
Yeah. So now you
So,
fast forward here.
yep,
You have children,
I do.
and you have nieces and nephews, of course, too. What kinds of things are you impressing upon them as they, develop or grow and think about career opportunities, either in the business or out of the business? What kinds of things are you advising them on or talking with them about?
Well, so we've given everybody an opportunity to intern here. I mean, we basically have reserved slots for grandchildren internships. That's what they're called.
Yep.
Um, and so if you, after high school, because we haven't had anybody here during high school because it's not safe.
Okay.
So you have to be at least 18.
Sure.
And generally, it's best if they don't work for me. We've had people who've interned at our research farm in Kelly. We've had people who've worked in the lab. We've had people who've worked for regulatory groups for other business units. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
my son happened to be interested in going to law school. So he did work for me, but he had a different supervisor. Um,
Okay.
and my other son is a software developer, and he and we have talked from time to time about, you know, could he work for Kemin? Would he be interested in doing that? He would, but he doesn't want to leave Chicago.
Okay.
So, and my other son just graduated from Marquette this last summer, and so he's now in the process of he's moved back here. I think he's going to take the Iowa bar in February, but he's going to start and look for um, work either here in Wisconsin or Iowa. And then
Okay.
so we have drafted a family constitution, which was an
Wow.
idea that we picked up from YPO.
Yeah.
And basically, the family constitution pretty much kind of describes structure of the company, the shareholding, and then kind of we have a whole section on employment.
Okay.
And part of the employment is if you want to be an executive now at Kemin, you have to at least take chemistry, biology, and physics.
Okay.
Um,
Oof.
because we're a science-based company,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to, if you didn't grow up with it, which Gen 3 did not, I mean, they grew up with it sort of attenuated,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
then you have to have learned it somewhere, and college seems to be the best place. Then you have to work somewhere for 2 years outside of Kemin before you join.
Okay.
And and then you join with a real job. It's not a makeup job.
Yep.
Uh, Job has to be open. It would be like in basic scientist in the lab. If you're in science, it would be an entry-level finance job, like maybe
Okay.
accounts receivable or accounts payable. And then after that, the only other thing that we ask family members to do is come to the quarterly Board of Advisors meeting if they can, and then and sit and observe. And then hopefully they progress in their career to a point where they if they want to step into a leadership role at Kemin. But
Okay.
it doesn't mean like we're always going to have a Nelson who is the chief executive officer of Kemin or the chief scientific officer,
Sure.
because if the talent in the family doesn't go that deep, then we would rather have the company managed with professionals, but that the family then becomes really attentive business owners.
Okay. I just in the little bit of time we have left, I was wondering if you could. Does a great job of kind of laying out, what it takes, right? And kind of I don't want to know if I'd say the hoops to jump through, but certainly the requisites to move through. I think a lot of families omit this, sadly, and then their children never get experiences elsewhere. They don't have anything to bring back to the company. They don't have ways to necessarily prove themselves outside of the firm, other things like that. Um, you just mentioned at the end here this quarterly board meeting that you invite them to attend. I was wondering if you could kind of give us a lens from their perspective, not from yours as a board member or shareholder or whatever, but from a Gen 3 for your family's case, the next gen coming up, kind of how they interact with that process or what you want them to pick up from that.
So we're going to have somebody, one of the Gen 3ers who's never been uh, to a board meeting here in October. And
Okay.
so it'll be a new experience for Whitney and her husband, Andrew. Um, and actually, for this board meeting, this is our global board. So we're flying everybody down to Norman, Oklahoma. We're going to tour one of our facilities there and then fly back and then have the meeting. Now,
Okay.
so that's a little unusual. Um, but what I hope they see in this is they kind of understand sort of the challenges that the business faces either currently or kind of into the future,
Yep.
and then what solutions the advisors would offer to help us kind of overcome those challenges. So what we're looking for from this board, they don't have a fiduciary obligation.
Sure.
Uh, so we separate the board of advisors from the statutory board.
Yep.
But these folks we treat as regular board members. And what we seek from them is, we expect to hear from them that's like, this is about the stupidest thing you guys could ever do, or that's a good idea, or they bring a totally different perspective. And what
Okay.
I would hope that a Gen 3 person listening to this would appreciate is that these are business people who have a different experiences than what we have, and that
Yep.
they're all bringing a perspective that we can take advantage of.
Yep.
My hope is that's what they get from the meeting.
Okay. And so this group of advisors is just kind of how it sounds, I would assume. It's non-family members who have had success in different fields that you're bringing together, sharing about how things are going with Kemin and getting their perspectives at
Yep.
strategic levels about ideas for growth and change and taking advantage of
Yeah, and this is
opportunities.
this is something that we've had for a long time. This
Okay.
is something my dad started actually. So
Really?
when he formed Kemin, when Kemin was incorporated, so we started in 1961, but we weren't incorporated until 1963. RW had a really, really thoughtful attorney give him some advice on how to run Kemin.
Okay.
And and Dave Bellin sat
Oh
on
yeah.
our board for a long time and he was the one who suggested the board of advisors concept, because he said, look, these are people you can invite in, you can pay them for their time,
Hmm.
and they can give you advice. And so he said, start with a banker, an accountant, and a lawyer. And so
Sure.
we did. And then the board, we expanded. So then we had marketing, operations, finance, and now on this board, we have global marketing from an Asian perspective. We have data management and just basically data analytics and data support. We
Yep.
have finance and accounting. We have global kind of operational concepts for both dietary ingredients and agricultural, and just basically the entire product line. And
Okay.
then we have a new advisor who's just joined us, who is a consumer. His experience is consumer-based products, selling consumer-based products. So this mix on the board now gives us, like, and definitely from the consumer viewpoint, that's different since we're a B2B business.
Right.
It gives us a whole different thought on how to approach markets and how to position products and how to think about sort of large, not sprawling, but sort of just large organizational concepts because um, he his company ran uh, uh, convenience stores and they had about 400 of them. So large organization, and then how to operate in a large organization.
Okay. Okay. So you've got those people and you get them together, I'm guessing quarterly and
Yep.
okay. Okay. This is great. I mean, um this is really kind of how families. And just one last question. Like, I'm guessing you didn't just start all this stuff, with the flip of a switch or a day one type of thing. So for our families that are listening that frankly look up to you guys as incredible champions and a success story in the family business realm in Iowa, is there any piece of advice on where you would start with some of this stuff or how you would, you know,
Yep.
advise smaller
Because
families?
we give this advice to our business units.
Okay.
So, and sometimes we have some very small business units. RW started this, like I said, it was a long time ago, but when he had his board,
Yep.
um, he would meet with them quarterly. And the best advice he ever got was to if you have if the only professionals you hire to help you run your business are a banker, an accountant, and a lawyer,
Yep.
then ask those people to help you be your initial board of advisors. You don't ask them to be your fiduciary board
Sure.
because that just carries a lot of sometimes unpleasantness with it. But if you ask them to be your advisors and then you meet with them quarterly and bring them strategic questions, don't bring them unless there's something just wildly tactical that you need help with.
Okay.
Um, One of the things that we used to do with our board, we'd run through the financials and all of our board people, they all read financials very well. But so now what we're asking our presenters to do, and then we have functional people come in and talk about their particular area or their particular product line or challenges that they're having with either products or customers. And and then ask and what the way we've set this up now is basically we do a pre-read, we send out the material, the board reads all of it. We have basically a short 5-minute presentation and then questions. And it's a colloquy. It's basically a conversation with the board members um, for advice.
Okay.
And then if they say something to you like, this it would be a really good idea if you did X, or hey, I just want to make you aware of Y,
Yeah.
then you probably should follow that advice.
Yeah,
And we
absolutely.
have. And I think it's proven to be successful wherever we have set up a company. So
Okay.
we followed this pathway in India, Singapore, China, Russia, South America, Africa, Europe,
Jeez.
and it has proven to be, very successful. It just builds a very strong foundation for the business.
Okay. Okay. Oh, wow. Well, again, I want to thank you, Libby. General Counsel, second generation leader with Kemin Industries, a company your parents started back in the early 1960s. Um, Holy cow. And as people have listened here, I think they can get a good sense of how you've over time incorporated different forms of governance and family policy to help kind of develop now what is going to eventually become Gen 3 leadership of the company in the, I don't know, not tomorrow, but sometime in the future. And I just it's amazing when you think about how few companies make it to Gen 2, let alone Gen 3, and how much work that takes and effort that takes and how much of that you've done, groundwork you've laid. I think you've done a great job here with me today on kind of laying out some of the things that your family has done and in turn would advise other families to consider adopting some of these employment policies. I love the idea of this internship program you've got. I'm going to try to talk more about that with a couple families I work with. And so, again, I just want to thank you, Libby, for being on with me today, for sharing some of this about your family and your path personally, and how that's been different and unique, and has then helped kind of set up what you do now for the next generation, your kids and others in Gen 3. So thank you so much for being on with us today, Libby. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Never Go Against the Family, a podcast produced by the University of Northern Iowa Family Business Center. You can find more information about the center, membership, and upcoming events at unifamilybusinesscenter.com. As Vito Corleone advises, never go against the family.